I want to thank both of you, not just for being here, but for all of the work that you've done to help make the Buddhist nunneries and also just Buddhist spaces safer for everyone. At the conference in Chicago, where both of you gave a very important opening presentation on the situation in Asian context with abuse. And I know that Dr. Chula has done her PhD doing research on the situation in Bhutan and how it affects Buddhist nuns there. And I think that it impacted many people to hear from both of you, partly because when abuse in Vajrayana communities is discussed, it's usually discussed as something happening outside traditional settings where Buddhism has been brought to North America or Europe, and people not familiar with how relationships with teachers or senior people in that community work. And so there's this idea that abuse happens out there because people don't understand how it works. They're able to be tricked into participating, coerced into participating in something because they don't have a good understanding of Buddhism, or that this is something that only people outside Asian contexts are willing to talk about or think is important. And that last piece, I think, is key. That you hear that, well, Asians don't care about this, which is, of course, ridiculous. And so it's so important, I think, to be able to hear from both of you what you've learned, what you see, and what you think about this issue. Can you share your own understanding of the situation around abuse in Asian contexts?
In context of Bhutan, it was through the research, my PhD research, that I found out also. I heard some occasions, but the one that I have heard earlier were already disrobed and they were outside of the nunneries and all. But in the nunneries and in the monasteries was during my research that I really saw. And then it was during my research, the teacher was a very young monk, and the nuns were also very young, all in the teenage. Very few of them were older nuns who were in the 40s and the late 40s, but they are all aware and they were all very against it. But the younger ones were very naive. They didn't know what the teacher was doing and all, because they were never actually ordained also. They just say that they're nun and just adorn with the robes and stay there. Because in Bhutan, in the corner, in the remote places, they don't get a proper ordination and all. And even if they get the ordinations, they are not taught properly about the Vinaya, that the do's and don'ts and all. And recently, where the nuns have gone for this Bhikshuni ordination, some of them doesn't understand what are the Bhikshuni rules and what they're supposed to do, because those who are not staying in the community, I think it's very difficult for them, and they have not gotten their education. So even if they read the text and all, they don't understand. So in a similar way, those nuns, younger nuns, were not taught about this, and they were openly used by the teachers, even during the daytime until 9 a.m., 10 a.m. They were sleeping, and they were, for me, first I didn't know, and then the nuns also didn't tell me anything, but there were some outsiders, outside people who were working there, constructing the kitchen and constructing toilets for the nuns. And those people approached me saying that you're well educated, you're from outside. Maybe if you tell them, they might listen to you. So they told me that they have been doing this and that. And then during the daytime also until 9, 10, 11, they can see them still sleeping in the room together and all these things. So then later when I talked to some of the nuns, then some opened up and slowly they were telling, but not everybody was telling. So that's how I found out. that it has been going on in the nunneries as well, and likewise in the monasteries.
Is this a case of celibate people breaking their celibacy vows together consensually? Or is it a case of some kind of coercion or abuse?
Definitely not is consensus, because the nuns don't know, and then the teachers always take advantage, saying that whatever the teacher says, you have to listen. So the students thinks, the nuns who are the students now in this case, thinks that they have to listen to whatever their teacher says. So they just go and accept whatever is being done. And it is not only one, two. Sometimes these teachers take them out to the cities, and then I heard that they are even like given to their friends to use.
Is it for payment? No.
Sorry?
Are they asking like passing to for that, like they get money or what?
I don't know about the money wise, but they take it to the like capital city and all. Then they rent a room in the hotel, and then the teacher says he will need to go somewhere, and then he send his friends, and then they will also use like that. So which means the teacher is the one who is doing this. Maybe to cover himself, he might be giving to his friends. Not sure what reason he is giving, or for the money purpose. Maybe not for the money. I don't think it's for the money.
And what happened when you were approached and asked to intervene? Were you able to make any impact on the situation?
I did talk to some of the nuns, the senior nuns, to talk to the younger ones, because as an outsider, I didn't want to interfere in the beginning. So the older nuns, they said they have told many times, even to the teachers, but and then they also went, one or two was nuns went to the higher authorization, the director of the nunneries, to inform about it, and then they were kicked out from the nunnery. In
The
fact,
ones
as
who
a result,
reported.
yeah, because then later when I asked why is it, then I found out that the higher authority, who was a director of the nunnery, who is also a senior monk and all, and the principal of the nunnery, all were also involved. They also are having affair with some, or one or two or few nuns. So because if that teacher is kicked out by them, that young teacher will definitely point the finger to them as well. So their action also will be brought out. So that's why they want to hide. So they kept the teacher, and then they kicked away 2 or 3 nuns. And later on, some of the senior nuns who also voiced out were almost whipped with the what is called the whipping thing that we use in the Bhutan and all, in front of all the nuns gathered
leather whip.
the leather whip. They are all assembled in the prayer hall, and then they were almost whipped. The nuns all had to beg not to beat the 2 senior nuns, because they also voiced out. So after that, nobody dared to speak up.
This is something that you're describing as being almost normalized in the nunnery that you did your research in, where it's happening at so many different levels that it can't be addressed because everyone's involved, and therefore everyone is willing to help
systemic,
to cover
yeah.
up. So does your research or do your own lived experience or personal observation indicate that this is something that happens not only in that nunnery that you studied?
Later on, I went to another nunnery in eastern Bhutan to do the research, because I did 2 research, one in the west and one in the east. And the western one is the one that is government supported, and the one in the east is a private nunnery. There, the nuns were not so badly treated in terms of the sexual abuse and all, but in education and all, the teacher were not giving, and in terms of making the nuns do the work, even the teachers, they have to work for the teacher, and the teacher's wife is also bullying the nuns, making them come to her house, wash her clothes. They are lay people. The teacher in that nunnery were both laymen, and then they had wife and children and all. They were making the nuns wash their clothes, cook for them, and then also at certain time the nuns also have to go and make a local wine, alcohol wine in the teacher's house. So those are the things that I have observed. But in terms of sexual abuse, I have not heard in that nunnery.
And what is your sense in other contexts, in other nunneries?
In other nunneries, I heard there are some, but I didn't hear as bad as the one that I did a research in the Western nunnery. There are so many where even Chelakama also have a witness, because two of us, plus we took seven Malaysian people to distribute the inner garments as a charity to the nunneries. We visited 8 nunneries in Bhutan. And then when we were there, we told that it is an inner garment, it's a private thing for the nuns, because in Bhutan and all, it's very sensitive. The nuns and all these young ones, they're very shy to see all these undergarments and all this. So we were distributing undergarments, a pad and all. So we told the monk teachers and all not to come in. So it's exclusively for the nuns. But the teachers came when we were almost to the end of the thing. And then we see them, the teachers are like rubbing the nuns on the back, and some even pulling the bra thread like that, And then the nuns were also just laughing and not doing anything. So it seems that there are things going on through our observation. But I have not lived long enough in those nunneries. It's just a day visit and all that I usually go, even if I go without them, whenever karma and all. When I go, it's always a day visit. But in some of the nunneries, I stay for longer because I have some friends there, and I stay in and I observe. And then in another nunnery where I went for 5 months Ngondo retreat in 2018, there are some nuns who are doing all these things. And then I heard that it is not their teacher in that nunnery, but it is some monks who also just came, and then they built their own retreat hut nearby the nunneries, the retreat place. And then he pretend to help the nuns, and then after that they are together. And then they also have a child now. So I think there are many cases. And in the monks' monasteries, definitely I heard many. Since I was very young, I hear that the smaller monks are being abused by the older one, and especially those even older ones also, those monks who look more like a feminine, who act more like a feminine, beautiful, it's fair complexion and all this. They are used by the senior and the older ones, and they are given everything. They are provided their necessary, the daily needs and all this by the senior monks in terms of money, food, whatever they need, but they use it. And likewise, I think it is not only in Bhutan, also in Ladakh, and also in South India and all. My friends during the Kala Chakra in Bodh Gaya, my nun friends, they have their younger brothers and all in South India studying. And when they came to Bodh Gaya to attend the Kala Chakra and all, sometimes on the days of no teaching, they go and visit their younger brothers with the mother and all. Once, one of my nun friend from Spiti, she went with her mother to see her younger brother. And then, because the tent is very big, instead of going to the front, they were from the back. So they wanted to check whether there's anybody in the tent. So that before they go to the front, it's a very long, big circumambulation they have to take. So instead, they peeped it through the back in the tent, and she and her mom was horrified to see the young monks running and screaming. And then they later saw that the older monks, some of the senior monks and the older monks are catching the younger monks, and then they're abusing sexually from the back, and also some at the thigh or something they saw with their own eyes. So it seems like it is everywhere. Only thing is nobody is like bringing out these topics.
So last month when I was in India, in Delhi, attending the Asian Buddhist Summit, I had the opportunity to interview one Rinpoche from Ladakh. I cannot mention any names, but he actually said that in his monastery is also a problem.
Same case.
And he actually is he has authority in the monastery, but he says that even though they do awareness raising and many other interventions, it's very systemic. And what Venerable said was that especially the feminine monks who have more feminine traits are the ones who are actually abused the most. He stopped short of saying they are raped actually, but I believe that that's what he wanted to tell me.
It is. And
I also heard from other sources also, which I cannot name, that some monasteries back 20 years ago, there was a massive outbreak of hepatitis. What C? Hepatitis C in one of the monasteries in South India because of pervasive sexual activity, both among male and female monastics. And many, as a result, many also died from hepatitis C, and it was a very big problem. But it has been mitigated to some extent now. But that just shows that sexual abuse, sexual activity is rampant, and also is systemic. Happens at many levels. And the head of the monasteries, they seem to be powerless in doing that for reasons best known to them. Some say that it is very difficult to detect. Some say that because some say that it's because of the reputation of the monastery, etc., etc. So, but to summarize, it's actually all pervasive.
And as Venerable was saying about the reputation, in Bhutan, once it came out in the newspaper and all, that I think some people, maybe some little bit who had a little bit of higher authority might have brought up this topic. And then in some of the monasteries, some monks were kicked out. They were black, colored with the black, and then they were asked to go the opposite circumambulation of the temple. Usually we go clockwise. They were asked to go anti-clockwise, and then they were kicked out. But then later on, there were so many who have done, but they have kicked out only some. Maybe they have really seen them and caught them red-handed. Not sure what is the reason. And then after that, I also talked to some higher authority monks who are working in the what is called?
The
monastic body of Bhutan. And they said that if we are very thorough with it, and if we have to examine them and kick out from the monastery, they said then the whole monastery will be empty. There will be no monks. So we cannot be so serious, and we cannot take it so seriously also. So because otherwise the monastery will all be empty. That's what he said. So that means they allow them to do, and then
that's why they are distributing the condoms,
And then there were some nuns also who were used by monks also. That one I saw from the first research place that I went. The nun was every now and then asked to make the butter lamp wick and then asked her to bring so and so things to provide, because the monk is in the retreat. And then she believed that I think she was in love with him. And then he also pretended to be in that. And then she go and stay few nights. I think he uses her, and then later on dumped her, and then she was crying and almost like in the verge of taking her life also. I was there to witness all this. So they definitely are using them.
Was she?
She was already at that time, I think maybe 40 something, early 40s.
And what is the youngest age? The youngest one?
That time, youngest one was 11 years old. 11 years old. In that nunnery, they have were about 50 over also, the oldest one, and then the younger one was the
was having the relationship with the teacher.
No, that one, having the relationship with the teacher is about 17, I think. 17, 18, so very young.
So I'm just trying to pull out all the threads of this very complicated scenario that you're revealing to us. So we're in a context of celibacy where monks and nuns all have vows of celibacy. Although, as we know, fully ordained monks lose their status as monks from the moment that they have sexual relationships, sexual activity, sexual intercourse. But we're in a celibate context with young people, and so I've heard you mention that people are in love or people have a relationship, but then there's also children who are being used. So how do we distinguish between monastics who fall in love and have sexual activities secretly from sexual abuse? How do you factor in the question of consent, the power dynamics, the coercion? How does that show
Because
up?
if it is really the love and they are in consensus, if they both agree and then they both are in love, usually they will come out of the monasteries or nunnery later at certain stage when they are ready, and then they live together. But many don't do that because they use this, and then even when they have completed their 9th year, they usually study for 9 years and then they go for 3 years retreat. So those monks who will have affair with the nuns or even with the lay girls, and then sometimes they have children, they will keep them home and then they will be doing the studies, and then I don't know how they support the family, and then they also go for 3 years retreat, and after that they come out and then they stay together. So those I think we can identify
They support through
as
the
also
Shakti.
through the that they have maybe they agree to each other, consensus and love and all. But those who don't, then they give certain reasons and they don't take care of the mother and the child that they have already abused and got pregnant, and then the child is born and all. So definitely, I think those are not in love. We can categorize, I think, in that way as well.
And also very young and impressionable nuns, First thing is they're not aware of their vows of celibacy because no one tells them what a nun's vows are. Many of them first they only are actually Genyin. They have not taken any Getso vows. And then those who are also Getso also don't really know their vows. And plus on top of that, the guru-disciple relationship, the teacher has overwhelming power over the minds of their students, and they actually put them in a position of submission where they feel that it is okay because the guru says so or the teacher says so. So it may not be a high guru, it can be an immediate like a philosophy teacher or language teacher, and then the teacher appears to insinuate that it's okay, and then they just follow because they don't know, because they come from rural villages and all, they don't really have education, they and exposure, so that is their world.
In most cases this is the situation.
But once it happens, it is almost always the nun will get expelled, and if she gets pregnant, like what Venerable says, then her life is destroyed, because then she's got to go back to the village, take care of a child, be a single mother, and then her whole life she continues to be abused. And this kind of stories are recorded by Uni Wicken in her 1996 article on Bhutanese. There's a Bhutanese nun who was raped
many times
and by monks, and then after that she was impregnated, kicked out of the nunnery, and then she lived her whole life in this kind of abuse cycle. And it is the most tragic story. If you have the opportunity, I wonder whether you have read the article or not by Wicken, 1996. So actually it is quite representative of what's happening to the nuns in Bhutan even in the present day. And that story is actually, that lady's story was about like 50-60 years ago, right? It's not a new one. That's an old lady who was telling her story to a researcher.
So for people who might not be familiar with what the guru-student relationship or teacher-student relationship looks like in these contexts, can you describe the power dynamics or the configuration of those relationships in a monastic setting?
So basically the teacher has power, obviously, because the teacher also has to discipline the children, the nuns or the young monks, So in So the power is either you can use it in a wise way and a positive way, or you could actually abuse it. So there's a very fine line between abuse and positive and negative. So I cannot comment on what motivates the teachers to actually abuse, because it's also beyond me. But from what I see and what the both of us have discovered in our research and all, is that because they can, because they are in a authoritative position, so they have authority, and they live together. That's another. So if they see the students and then they don't actually have the opportunity to visit their living quarters, then that is fine. But in the nunnery, so it's actually the the rules are very lax in terms of who can enter into a nun's quarters or the nun going into a monk's quarters. All these kinds of things are very blur. The lines are very blur. So many people know they see clandestine affairs. They see the nun going into the monk's room, or the monk suddenly coming into the nun's room. All these kinds of things are quite common. And so that's where there's a lack in discipline. And the abbot and the abbess, I don't know why in the nunnery that you studied, there was no clear boundary. There's a lack of respect for boundaries that allows these teachers to actually take advantage of their students. Because after teaching, then you should not actually have much contact with your students anymore. But then the students bring the food, bring medicine, etc., and that's where it opens the doors for abuse.
I think in most cases, the teachers don't come, if it is a monk teacher, to the nuns' room, but the nuns are summoned into their room, as Venerable Karma mentioned, for the food, medicine, and also sometimes in the pretext of getting to the teacher of what they have studied and all, like especially for the memorizations and all, we have to go in front of the teacher and memorize what we have memorized, today's page, and then we have to recite in front of the teacher. So they summon it into the room and all. So once they have started all this, I think they don't bother much. So they just simply call any time and then the students go in. But in the beginning, I'm sure they usually start with this type of things.
Students, because they don't know their own vows, and they also don't know basically the restrictions of entering into the quarters of monks, etc. So the segregation, there's no actually clear segregation between male and female. And even sexual abuse doesn't necessarily have to be male and female anyway.
Yeah.
So then it's even worse when it comes to the homosexual activity, where everybody lives together, and that's where it's all pervasive.
Well, you're describing not just a very strong top-down authority that seniors or a teacher is given over the student, like a parent over a child. You're describing a situation where there's no checks on the authority of the teacher. There's no one who's setting parameters for what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So it's a kind of absolute authority. Is that how that operates?
Especially in nunneries which are remote, and they are left to the mercy of the teachers. And many people don't want to go and teach the nuns high up in the mountains. It's such a burden on them. Their salary is not that great.
Yeah.
And then the nuns find it very hard to get a teacher. And once they get a teacher, they feel that, wow, finally we get a teacher, somebody to teach us. Anyone is better than not having any teacher at all. So then the teacher starts to get pompous and entitled, and then then the teacher just makes himself very comfortable, and then after that it opens the door to abuse. So and others it's very difficult to tell the teachers also, because then the teachers will run away, and for months and years you can't get another teacher or replacement.
And also, even if get replacement, then one teacher goes, two teacher goes, then the people outsiders, well, they think that it is the nun's fault. That's why the teachers are not able to stay for longer, which they don't see the fault of the teachers.
You're describing a system where abuse needs to be tolerated, both because you need the teacher and also, as you mentioned before, for the reputation of the nunnery or the monastery, or even the dharma
But
itself.
having said that, now we have
In
female teachers also, which are not actually being sent to the nunneries and all, and if female teachers are sent also, their salary is very low, and basically I don't know why they're not actually sending the female teachers. Can you explain in the context of Bhutan?
In terms of the reputations earlier, I think it is the nuns are not from their side, they are not worried about reputation. They are actually bringing it to the higher authorities of what is happening in the thing. But the higher, as I said, the higher authorization, the higher authorities also are involved. They don't want to amend the teacher, but instead whoever comes forward and voice out are the ones who are kicked out. So they keep quiet for that reason. But from the higher authorities, I think it is that they don't want to expose their own teacher, the younger ones that they have recommended and they have sent it through their connections and all.
And also because they themselves have faults also, that the younger ones know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because when they send their own connected people, those people cannot say anything or point finger to them because they themselves are doing this. So they, in that way, both are helping each other. So that's why they keep the younger monks as a teacher in those nunneries. And in terms of the one that
covering up their seniors' actions, so the senior allowed them to abuse the nuns because the seniors themselves, the ones sitting down in the monastic body, some of them also have got faults. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the topics that you're pointing to is gender imbalance, and the particular vulnerability of female monastics in those power settings.
And also the dichotomy of lay and monastic, even the perpetration of discrimination, lay discriminating, female lay discriminating monastics, and higher ordained monastics discriminating lower ordained monastics. So there's layers of discrimination. Monk discriminate nuns, monk discriminate lay people, lay women, and then after that the lay women discriminate the nuns, and then the nuns discriminate the nuns.
So that's why even in the Tibetan nunneries in India and all, so there were so many nuns now, geshe-mas. And then I last year when I met some of the geshe-mas in the Bodh Gaya, I asked them, because randomly when we talk as a friend, we know them for many, many years in Dharamsala. When I asked, now that you have all become a geshe-ma, what do you do? They say that we are just in the kitchen or in the office. We're cooking for the younger ones who are studying, and all. We are working in the office as a discipline master, or sometimes as a chanting master or treasurer. And so that means they still, even the nunnery authorities, even if because there's in the authorities, the higher is always a monk or a lay people. It's not the nuns. So the nuns, I think, don't have the full power to appoint their own nuns as a teacher. So they still have the monks, and very few are appointed in the, I think in Dromaling also only 2 or 3 are appointed as the nun teacher. They still have the monk teacher. And even in terms of my own nunnery, where I studied in Jamyang Chuling, we also have only one geshe-ma who is teaching, and then the rest of all still monks, even though we have geshe-mas, many geshe-mas who are able to teach the nuns, and their knowledge is also as far excellent as those monks, but they are not appointed as the teacher. Or I don't know if it is the nun themselves are not interested to teach the younger nuns. But in other nunneries, I think there are so many who wanted to be a teacher, but they are not given the opportunity. They still prefer to have the monk teachers by the higher authorities, who are always the monks, as I said, or a lay people. So the nuns don't have the power in that to appoint their own nuns, or for them to be able to stand up and speak that we want to be our own teacher in our own nunneries. Likewise, in South India also, the Gelug nunnery in Jamshid Chuling also, there are very few of them who are a nun teacher, appointed as a nun teacher, when they have so many geshe-mas now, where they're able to actually have enough teacher for the nun in their own nunneries, as well as they could send to other nunneries as well if there's need. And in the same way, in the Nyingma monasteries also, most of the nuns that they pass out from the Namdroling, they are Kenmos and all this, but they are not appointed as a teacher. And now in the Sakya also, they have few who are already given the title of Kenmos, and they are not teaching, but they are just Kenmo by the title and stay in the nunnery as I don't know what, but not as a teacher Kenmo. But always they send the monks. So I think it is all everywhere.
So if we want to
See.
address the issue of sexual abuse, we also have to first address the power dynamics.
Yeah.
Then there's numerous hierarchies, and then raise awareness, on the basically the vows, teach the vows to the nuns, and also set clear boundaries.
Yeah, this is the only thing that we can do at the moment. So that's why when Venerable Karma and when we take the group to all this India, Nepal, and all this to give our charity of inner garments, we also try to do a little bit of
to teach the young nuns about what is appropriate touch.
the do's and
So we
don'ts
have
and
done some awareness raising on appropriate touch, but of course the monks are not happy. We can see when we are doing that. Yeah, so but anyway, we do it anyway.
So I would like to ask you about your own work and what motivates it. It's clear that you make yourselves unpopular in different ways to people whose position of authority you are putting into question when you're calling out the abuse dynamics. And there's also this comment that you may have heard, I know that I've heard, that you're harming the reputation of the Dharma by talking about by airing this dirty laundry. What are you trying to gain? What is the
Agenda behind it?
Mhm. Yeah. So I wonder if
Whether
you
we
could
have
say
vested
something.
interest. Yeah. So actually speaking, we never intended to voice anything out, and it was not even the subject of our research. We were actually doing research on access to education and general discrimination. Then during the course of Venerable's PhD, I was also actually basically reading the books that I was actually an external supervisor for Venerable's PhD. And I read her dissertation, and at the same time, we collected books. So some of the books that we read, it's Damcho's books on the nuns in Zanskar, and then she talked about clandestine affairs in Zanskar,
Sanskar,
the Zanskari nuns, and how they are actually abused and mistreated also. So at that time, Venerable hadn't gone to the field yet. So we roughly had some idea, but not to the extent that Venerable found out. And then the research on access to education and basic discrimination turned out to the what we intended to do actually turned out to be something else. So we went in to find out about the reasons, the root causes for the lack of access to monastic education and basically equal opportunities. It was a social justice anthropological dissertation, only to find out the site information on the sidelines. And then we had a discussion with Venerable's PhD supervisors in her university, and whether to put it in the dissertation or not, because it was impactful, was very important, and then we all agreed that we should put it in the dissertation. And then of course, both of us over tea, over breakfast, or whatever it is, we just can't forget, so it's just like the more Venerable writes about it, the more I read her dissertation and check it, and the more we feel like, it's like if we were to sit and let this just pass by, then we are not actually having compassion. We are just dressed in the robes, but we don't have the compassion. We have this so-called the two bodhicittas. One is the one that you just aspire, but it's not the engaging one. So we said that it's no use sitting on the cushion and then chanting "May all beings be well and happy," and then that's about it. So if you die, if you get raped, it's none of my business. So And then, of course, somewhere along time, it happened also to me. My own uncle, remember? I talked about this in. So then I said that that's it. My uncle did not respect boundaries. He did. I was in my robes and he groped me, and I was just short of giving him a slap. But as a monastic, I just walked off, but I gave him a slap in a different way, not a physical way. So then I said we really need to do something. So my own personal experience actually triggered the motivation, and Venerable saw how I was treated post the molestation experience
By
and
the
then
family.
by
as
the
well.
family and all. Then I was thinking how, and then we had this greater. It's not that we didn't have any empathy. We already had empathy, but we hadn't actually published. Venerable hadn't submitted her dissertation yet, so we couldn't actually really do anything about it. And after she submitted her dissertation, the incident happened to me. Then I said, no, that's it. We need to talk about it. We need to do it. So then we proposed. Then we had this Guru Yoga.
Yeah.
That was the first time we talked about it.
Third Vajrayana
Third
Buddhist
Vajrayana summit.
conference in Bhutan.
So
It's where
we
presented.
wanted to tell them,
And
you
it
know what is
to bring
happening,
the changes also.
but we did it in a so-called skillful way of talking about it in the form of Guru Yoga. If we were to put forth our paper as sexual abuse, it will never get. They will never invite us for Vajrayana
they won't
conference.
accept our proposal as well.
Yeah, so we sort of like hid it somewhere, embedded it into our presentation, and then of course as you may have read, we received some brickbats not only during the presentation but also in the hotel. So we were like hounded, but we managed to appease whoever. We explained the situation. We didn't succumb to quarrel or anything like that, and then we also sent the proposal to Venerable Lekshila Sakyadita
in Australia.
2019, and then she said, go ahead. So then that gave us the added, confidence and motivation, because we need to raise awareness. It's no vested interest. It's just that it happened to me, and Venerable already found out about it. We've been talking about it, but the last straw was because it happened to me. We needed to get it done. We needed to, so.
And I also had many experience that the monks are approaching to me and then saying that, shall we practice together? You can help me elevate, and I'm also in this stage, like that. So many came and tried to woo me.
When you say practice, you mean some sort of sexual
Consort
practice.
practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, consort practice.
They are talking about this.
The Kama Mudra.
Kama Mudra.
Crazy wisdom, So that we thought that we really need to do something about it. It's not like you just simply pounce on any nun or whoever it is, and then tell. And then we've heard so many, and we also actually have been a little bit like nauseated whenever some of the lamas come and then they talk to our female friends, lay people. Oh, you're such a, you look like a dakini, these
You
kinds
have
of
a third
things.
eye, we
You
can
got a
see
third
you.
eye, all these kinds of grooming in process. We have actually witnessed grooming in Malaysia also. The lamas come here and then they try to groom the girls, and the girls are so like, how to say, they feel so happy that, they are the chosen ones. And I was thinking, no such thing. It's just taking you for a ride, And he says that to everybody, and we know.
And then it is because of that also that we understand what we are supposed to do and what we are not supposed to, when we are supposed to be engaging with all these things. We know. So that's how now that we teach the younger nuns to be aware of all this. That's the only thing at the moment we can do, because the higher authorities themselves don't want to bring any changes. As I mentioned earlier, the higher authority people say that if we examine and all this, kick out the monks who are doing all this, then the monastery will be empty. So how can we do all this? So it doesn't look like it's going to. So it is best that we can give the awareness to the nuns and then the younger children and all. So that is the best at the moment that we are trying to do.
And it's not only in terms of like monks, like nuns or in the monastic setting.
Yeah.
We also go to Dharma centers within Malaysia and teach the children from as young as 5 years old about what is appropriate touch and inappropriate touch in Sunday Dharma schools.
Yes.
So because we really want the girl child and even the male child to actually understand, what is right touch and what is wrong touch and all these kinds of things.
And even they get all these abuses, the male child also.
Yeah.
So that's why we don't I differentiate between boys and girls.
Yeah.
We give
So
the
we-
thing awareness and teachings to all these young children as well.
So we use a doll, you know,
Dummies.
actually it's a teddy bear. Yeah. We use a teddy bear and then we put an underwear and then, you know, and then we say what is appropriate touch, you know, how should you touch? And then we ask the children, is it a good touch or a bad touch? And then the children will scream, this is a bad touch, you know, so they understand. And then we show them some videos. So it's not like we are going out to smear Buddhism. It's just that we want to be, you know, by telling the truth now, we are saving Buddhism from falling flat on its face in the future. So if we don't do something about it, Buddhism will actually die. So it's nothing about tarnishing the image of Buddhism. If we let it rot, it's like a how to say, like a plant, you know. So if we let the roots rot, one fine day it will just collapse. So we are actually trying to get to the bottom of this to save the roots from decaying and rotting, so that Buddhism will prevail for a longer time. Even no matter how painful it is, we still, you know, sometimes if you have a gangrene foot, for example, you need to cut the foot, right? Before it you know,
Takes the
it's
entire whole body.
it spreads through the entire body. So that's what we are doing, actually, cutting the gangrene portions off. And you know, and no one wants their foot to be cut off. So we are like that surgeon, you know, who people say that, you know, you took my foot away. But no one says that the surgeon saved the body. The person is still alive. So it's very easy to blame the surgeon for cutting the foot and throwing it away. But you know, it's very hard to see that the surgeon actually saved the life. So we don't profess to be surgeons or anything, you know, any big people. We just are doing our part only. So if people like it, so be it. If people don't, it doesn't matter, because our motivation, we know. We don't need other people's validation to do the work that we do.
Deep, deep bow to both of you.